explain adjustment to equilibrium process. Okay, so in the adjustment to equilibrium process, you have to look at P1. I can even label P1 for you. Okay, so at P1, please compare quantity demanded and quantity supplied. That is your first step. Second step, you need to identify a shortage or a surplus. Okay. So after you compare QDD, QSS, you find a shortage or surplus. Then you tie it to upward or downward pressure on price. Finally, you explain movements along the new curves. Then finally, define equilibrium, which is the point where there's no tendency for further change, right? Compare, identify, pressure, movement, equilibrium. Okay? A lot of you do CIP, Community Involvement Program, right? So that's for you. CIP ME. Okay, the 5 steps. And now you have to do it for this diagram. So once you get past the barrier of, oh, this diagram is so confusing, as long as you know there's a sequence of steps, then it becomes more structured. Okay? So you can have about 5-6 minutes or 7 minutes to do this, and then another 5-6 minutes for a break, right? A halftime break, and then we will discuss this, right? So this will bring us to 8, let's say 8:15. Okay. We'll see if you are alright at 8:15. If you are having problems, just raise your hand. I'll come over. Okay. Now, so if you see what's happening, right, we have an increase in supply and a decrease in demand, right? The increase in supply exceeded the decrease in demand. So this is the situation we are looking at. Number one, if you are not sure why this is the case illustrated here, okay? I said the increase in supply is bigger than the decrease in demand. It's because the distance here is bigger than the distance here. So these things cannot lie. You see it like that, it's like that, okay? So as you know, the bearing is always from the x-axis. Okay, so when this happens, we will say at original price of P1, okay? So the old price of P1, your quantity supplied is here. You put big Q, small q, doesn't matter, right? Then quantity demanded is here. Do you get the correct one? If yours was not correct, then you just put another thing here, all right? Compare quantity demanded and quantity supplied at the new curves. All right, if you didn't label the correct one, always remember you're looking at what happened, old price versus new curves. Okay. So step 1 is always old price versus new curves. I put S in brackets because sometimes only one curve shifts. Okay. So at original price of P1, quantity supplied, spell quantity in full, right? Which is QS, exceeded quantity demanded, okay, which is QD. Okay, make sense? So this results in a surplus, a very big surplus, this big. You can label on your diagram. Okay, so you have a very big surplus leading to downward pressure on price. Okay, downward pressure on price. Surplus is always downward. Like durian season, okay? After durian season, they still have a surplus of durians, they will drop the price to try and sell everything. When there's a shortage, like shortage of houses, the price will go up. Follow? So prices look set, right? They look set to fall. And we should complete the diagram by labeling this, right? So this is Q2, Q1, P2, and P1 above. Any questions? Okay, so it leads to downward pressure on price, and we are going to say that as price falls, okay, as your price falls, quantity demanded increases along D2. Okay, so quantity demanded increases along D2. You see that? While quantity supplied falls along S2. Okay, until equilibrium is restored at P2, where there is, you can say at P2 and Q2, that's fine, where there is no tendency for further change, right? For further change. That's it. Okay, that's the whole explanation. Any questions? You got this? Okay, you got this? Very good. So this is CIPME. Alright? So to summarize the key steps, E is pure memory work. Memory work on what? On the definition of equilibrium. Okay? Point where there's no tendency for further change. How about the point M? Movements. Always take your directions or take your bearing from x-axis. What I meant here is, if you want to know whether to say it's an increase or decrease, always be very clear, you're looking at quantity, you're not looking at price. A rightward movement is an increase, a leftward movement is a decrease. Okay? Then the pressure shortage leads to upward pressure. Surplus leads to downward pressure. Okay? I, nothing to say. I All right, C is old price versus new curves. With this, you probably take care of maybe your second tutorial even. Where they ask you to do some shifts and what happens, okay? Maybe one thing is you can show on the diagram, like what we did here. We tried to show the size of the shortage or the size of the surplus. Okay. Usually this thing happens in econ when you go